Wolfpack fans are certainly banking on quarterback Grayson McCall playing well this season, but can he play Maxwell?
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Sports have stopped sporting the way we want them to over the summer, but that's exactly where FanDuel steps in. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com in order to get started. Happy Tuesday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. This is one of two Tuesday episodes. It's a 2 for Tuesday. The second episode will be posted later on this afternoon, so be on the lookout for that. But this is our first episode of Tuesday, and we are talking all things Grayson McCall. We saw on Monday he landed on the Maxwell Award Preseason Watchlist for the 2024 season. And sure, it's just another preseason Watchlist, but it's a really big deal. The Maxwell Award is presented to the best player in college football. Many of you are probably like, I thought that was the Heisman. It's a little bit of linguistics, but the Heisman is the most outstanding player. It's a different organization that presents that award. So despite seeming very similar, they are two separate awards. The Maxwell Award put out their watch list of all the players in the country that are on it. Grayson McCall is the only one from NC State. Maybe some folks expected to see KC on there, but it was only Grayson. And today we're going to talk about why he could win it, maybe some reasons why he can't win it, and if NC State can still have the season they want to, even if he doesn't win. In this first block, Kenton, we're going to talk about why Grayson McCall could actually win the Maxwell Award. You want to start?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first thing first, it is objectively a quarterback award. I mean, It's been quite a streak of quarterbacks winning it back to back to back. I believe the last non-quarterback to win it was Devontae Smith. And before him, you'd have to dig a little deep to find another non-quarterback as well. So that's definitely a benefit of this thing working out for his favor. He plays the most important position in football, the most visible position in football. So I don't think there's any world in which you would say, it's all right. And, he doesn't really have a shot positionally like some other fantastic players we've had that just, there's a reason. The Maxwell has not gone to a defensive player in quite some time, if ever. So with that in mind, that's one of those things that he just plays the right position to win it, number one. Number two, a lot of these awards, whether we want to talk about it or not, they are more team awards than individual awards. How many times have we seen a Heisman winner with under 9 wins? It's extremely rare. It's extremely rare if we see a guy with 9 or less win it, and that guy has to put up the craziest numbers in the world. But how many times have we seen a guy who was leading an undefeated team where it's like, you're not even a leader? What's going on there? I believe, and I could be wrong here, but I believe Jason White from Oklahoma won it way back when Adrian Peterson was there. And even as a small child, I was like, that's not the guy. I'm sorry to tell y'all, he's not the reason they're winning. So, it's a team award, and NC State is primed to have an excellent season. That's another reason that he could win this award. But last but not least, I believe the biggest thing that could get him over the hump, if he's close to somebody else, the contrast between last year and this year potentially. If he puts up even not even fully gaudy video game numbers, if he just puts up a really good season, people will look back at last year and say, look at the instability that NC State was rife with at quarterback. Look at the numbers that were put up by both quarterbacks combined. Now look at this year. Look at one guy taking this offense over, being a fearless leader, doing a ton of great things, which, again, a lot of these other guys, they will not have. I think the only guy that I could say on this watch list can truly say, hey, look at me, I'm turning this thing around, is maybe Cam Ward. So, I think that he has a ton of opportunity to pull this thing off.
This is primarily an award that's won by quarterbacks. In fact, Many of the winners of the Maxwell Award have also won the Heisman in that same year. It hasn't happened all the time. For example, just this last season, Michael Penix Jr. of Washington won the Maxwell Award, but you had Jaden Daniels win the Heisman. And Kenton, to answer your question, the last defensive player to win it was Manti Te'o in 2012. Something that you will find with all the Maxwell Award winners, they either won the Heisman or more than likely they were a finalist.
And Manti Te'o had an additional push in terms of outside stories that may have helped him win that Maxwell. So
a little additional motivation, you could say.
Yeah, whether it was real or not, it existed.
So yes, more often than not, it is won by a quarterback that is in the conversation, or I should say, is a finalist for the Heisman Award. We talked a couple weeks prior. Would it be so crazy to see Grayson McCall in New York as a Heisman finalist? It might sound crazy, but if Grayson McCall executes at a really high level, which is something that he has done over the course of his college career, it's not so hard to believe that the skill players placed around him are going to rocket up his numbers. His pass yards are probably going to be much more gaudy at NC State than they were at Coastal Carolina. Looking back through his stats at Coastal Carolina, there is something that's very consistent, and that's completion percentage. In 2020, it was 68.8. 2021, which is arguably his best season of his career, 73% completion percentage. 2022, 69.7. Even through fighting through some injury last year, he was at 67.4. So this is a quarterback that doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes. He's only thrown 14 career interceptions to 88 career touchdowns. If you execute at a high level, you find your receivers, you're making the correct reads, you're making the smart throws, his numbers will more than likely take off from there. So he would have to see a very large increase in probably many of his numbers, but it's not so crazy to believe that his numbers could take off with the roster that's been built around him.
Yeah, that's another thing that definitely works in his favor in terms of, I talk about the narrative from last year to this year. Many people don't consider the outside factors that got better as well, right? Many people will not consider, and this is with all due respect to the gentleman from last year's team, okay? I don't want to disrespect anybody or denigrate anybody, but nobody will really take into account, hey, there's no more jump balls being thrown to guys under 6 feet. Like, that's not happening anymore on this NC State team. So, there's an influx of talent, and even the talent that was here last year got a year older, a year better, looking at you, Dakari Collins, looking at you, Juice Vereen, and all those guys. And so, I'm very excited to see what this team looks like in terms of Grayson's ability to lead these guys and to have that narrative painted around him of, hey, he's been phenomenal. He turned this offense around at a school that was known for just defenses pounding people's heads into the dirt, but just praying that their offense gave them precious little. Now they've got a legitimate offense that is rolling. That would definitely help that would definitely help Grayson McCall win this award.
Small connection I want to make here to Devin Leary. I don't exactly think McCall and Leary are comparable. I think they're two very different style of quarterback. But back in 21, Devin Leary threw for 35 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions. The most pass touchdowns that Grayson McCall has thrown in one season was in 2021 also, when he threw 27 to just 3 interceptions. Now, I believe for McCall to be in the conversation for the Maxwell Award, he's probably going to be up around, I'd say, at least 40. That's going to be around the level of the other guys that are in contention for that award. This is not me trying to throw any shade here, but I believe that if Devin Leary can throw 35 in 21 with talent that I don't think that is as good as McCall has around him now, does anyone think McCall is incapable of hitting 35, maybe even a couple more than 35? I think he can absolutely do it. His overall accuracy, his ability to improv, a Robert and I offense, and again, those skill players that have been placed around him, I think anything is possible for McCall in this offense. And listening to him speak at ACC kickoff, he was kind of alluding to the fact that he feels comfortable in any type of offense, whether it's spread, he can run the option a little bit, he can do some RPO, play action, under the center, he can do it all. And with Robert and I pulling the strings, your offensive coordinator, getting real creative with a guy that doesn't make many mistakes could lead to very gaudy offensive numbers. So don't think it's so crazy to think about Grayson McCall in the conversation for the Maxwell Award once the season wraps up in December. And now coming up next, we're going to talk about the cons. What are some reasons maybe Grayson McCall won't be in the conversation for the Maxwell Award? This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. First sponsor of the day is FanDuel. Look, we all love sports, and in fact, we love them so much, we can't wait for them to return this fall. The playoffs are gone, and all we have to watch in the moment is baseball and the Olympics. Sports aren't exactly sporting the way we want them to, but that's where FanDuel comes in handy. FanDuel keeps the sports going all summer long whenever we need them. All we have to do is open up the app and dream up any bets at any time you're in the mood. This summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Middle portion of our first Tuesday episode, now talking about some hurdles that Grayson McCall is going to have to clear in order to be in the conversation for the Maxwell Award at the end of this year. I'll start this one off. First of all, he's going to have extremely stiff competition. You look at some of the favorites for the Heisman right now, Dylan Gabriel. I think Dylan Gabriel's going to throw for literally like 1,000,000 yards out at Oregon this year. He is extremely talented skill players. That offense is really suited to his play style. You can't count your chickens in late July, but I would fully expect Dylan Gabriel to be a front runner for not only the Heisman, but probably the Maxwell Award as well. Then you look at names like Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, a couple running backs in the conversation, Ollie Gordon, maybe even Quinshawn Judkins up at Ohio State now. There's a couple handfuls of wildly talented players that are on, don't take this the wrong way, they're on more talented teams than perhaps NC State is. Maybe that'll look different at the end of this season, but the way that Ohio State's roster is stacked, Oregon's roster is stacked, Texas, you get where I'm going with that. These teams are built to go like 12-0 every single year. Back to Kenton's point of these awards being more team awards sometimes than more individual, just a quarterback of a 12-0 team is going to have a leg up on a guy like Grayson McCall. If, in fact, that NC State is not 12-0 themselves. Maybe they will be. There's a lot of work to be done before you reach that point. So number one is really not even something that McCall can control. All he can do is just win every game in front of him, but he's got extremely stiff competition.
Yeah, so I want to push back on that a little bit, and let me tell you why. I think it is not what these teams are or not, what they will or will not be, because I find it very interesting that you included Texas in there, because Texas ain't pissed a drop in years.
Well, yeah.
Them boys have done nothing since Mac Brown left, with all due respect. I know they made the playoff last year. Year. But other than last year, what have they done since Mac has been gone?
No, that's fair. I'm looking at them in the CFP last year.
And here's where I am going. You are right. It is a team award, and that may be one of the hindrances, not reality, perception. Perception is much more powerful than reality in worlds where these voters get to, say, hey, who they think is the best. Prime example, Peyton Wilson, JOK, Defensive Player of the Year, COVID year, ACC Defensive Player of the Year. They both played linebacker. Peyton beat him in every stat except one or two. And when I say Peyton beat him, most of those, he like darn near lapped the guy. And somehow JOK walks away with ACC Defensive Player of the Year. How'd that happen? That gold paint on that helmet hits different, means a little bit more. Notre Dame is another team. What have they done? What championships do they have to show for all of the love and adoration that they get nationally? And yet, when it came time for an award to be passed out, our guy was still passed over for a guy who objectively was not as impactful to his team. And same thing with Rocket Watts last year. It's the same thing. So I look at this and I say to myself, NC State does not have the national perception at this moment to make it an easy win. The same way that, let's say, Jaden Daniels at LSU did, because people look at LSU and revere LSU as a high-flying offense. And yes, I'm not saying Jaden Daniels didn't do his part, put up amazing numbers and all that. He also had 2 first-round receivers. Like that's, so I look at this and I say to myself, I see the vision. I understand where we're going, but that perception may be one of the biggest holds on Grayson, even if State goes 12-0, even if we're talked about as the number 2 or 3, maybe even number 1 team in America. there will still be that moment of, is a guy from NC State about to do this? Is this happening? So I think that that's one of the biggest hurdles there.
Another thing that we've talked about that's on the field is Grayson McCall doesn't exactly need to be perfect for NC State this year, but I think for him to be in the conversation for the Maxwell Award, he's got to be damn near close. Because all these other guys, like I already mentioned, they're going to have the ridiculous stat lines and the ridiculous pass touchdowns and the ridiculous amount of yards, all playing on teams that rarely make mistakes. They're going to be 11-1, 12-0, that type of deal. So, for example, if NC State is 10-2, but he has comparable stats to some of the other finalists, do you think that Grayson McCall would get as comparable of a look than a quarterback that's on a 12-0 team?
No, not at all. Not at all. And there's one final thing that I want to say that definitely works against Grayson McCall in a major way. Don't take this the wrong way because I love this guy. I think he's one of the best to ever do it. Grayson McCall is the Tim Duncan of quarterbacks. What do I mean by that? The big fundamental. If somebody were to pull up a Tim Duncan highlight reel, it does not hit the same as a Jamal Crawford highlight reel. Is
True.
Jamal Crawford half the player that Tim Duncan is? No. Objectively, no. Like no one in their right mind would say, I would trade two prime Jamal Crawfords for one prime Tim Duncan. That's foolish, even in today's guard-driven game. What am I saying by that? When you think about a Heisman moment, right, you've got Lamar Jackson's spin against Florida State a few years ago. That was a moment that you looked at and you're like, oh, yeah, that's it. You think of Kyler Murray, I believe it was CeeDee Lamb that he hit on a deep post where it was like, holy cow. You can call him short, you can call him a midget, you can call him whatever you want to call him. That boy can fling it a country mile.
Yeah. And
not only that, the run against Texas, where it was like, oh, my God, they just can't catch this guy. It's impossible. You think about Devontae Smith and all of his exploits at receiver. He was constantly running away from dudes, making people who would make the average human look incredibly slow. He made those guys look like their feet were in mud. The thing about Grayson McCall, he doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, and he's not the most mobile in the world. So what does that mean? What do your highlights look like? You making the right decision time and time again, which objectively is not as exciting as, a guy who was a finalist for the Heisman a few years ago, Andre Williams, massive back from BC, had thighs so big he couldn't wear jeans. It's not as exciting as him running a guy over and not breaking stride because, again, it's a Tim Duncan highlight reel. It's him doing the fundamentally right thing and hitting that bank shot time and time again. So, I think that works against him as well.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean in him having to be pretty close to perfect. And I think that the freak athletes, sometimes they are so athletic they can cover up a couple mistakes they make. I wouldn't exactly put Grayson McCall in that category. He's a really good athlete, but he's no Kyler Murray. He's no Caleb Williams. He's no Jaden Daniels. The sheer athleticism that can get you out of any situation or throw it over the top when no one thinks that you have the arm strength to get it there. Grayson McCall is just a quarterback that makes really good decisions for the majority of his throws. And that's a lot of times that can be enough. But to find yourself as a finalist of the Maxwell Award or possibly even the Heisman Trophy, you have to be an electric player at all times virtually. The margin for error is so incredibly small if Grayson McCall is going to find himself in the conversation for this award.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree.
Rounding out our Tuesday episode, we're going to discuss if NC State can still accomplish their goals for the season if Grayson McCall is not in the conversation for the Maxwell Award. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Our second sponsor of the day is Ibotta. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. What do all three of these things have in common? You're probably buying a ton of them over the course of the summer. But don't stress about the cost. Use Ibotta and get cash back on all of your purchases when you stock up on all of your summer essentials. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every single time you shop. You can earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies and even toys. You can make sure that you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. A lot of times, other apps can give you points, but they don't often amount to much. With Ibotta, you can earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or even gift cards. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila! the money is yours. So that's why right now it's time that you join the 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every single time they shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta and using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back. And again, make sure you use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in the Google Play or App Store using code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, only on Ibotta. Third sponsor of the day is Factor Meals. Warmer, sunnier days are calling. You need to fuel up for them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. You can meet all of your wellness goals in time for summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and even Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. No matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. With over 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from, every single week you'll have new flavors to explore. You can treat yourself to restaurant quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and even some blackened salmon. You can enjoy effortless support for your lifestyle, choosing from 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, maximize protein intake, avoid meat, or simply eat well balanced. So head on over to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your first month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com. Last couple minutes of our first Tuesday show, now discussing if NC State can still accomplish their goals this season if Grayson McCall is not in the running for the Maxwell Trophy. Kenton, your thoughts first.
So I would say absolutely, yes. And this is what I mean by that. He does not have to be – would it be nice if he was Maxwell material? Yes. Yes. If he is, again, guaranteeing you a spot in Charlotte, guaranteeing you a spot in the playoff. Absolutely, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. However, could this team accomplish their goals without it? Yes. There are multiple worlds where that happens. There are multiple worlds where the backfield is so good, you're like, man, Jordan Waters is better than we thought. Hollywood Smothers, Kendrick Raphael, these guys are getting it done. It's hard to imagine a world where you can say, hey, these guys aren't the best thing rolling and smoking. And so with that in mind, naturally you're looking at a very tough time in trying to get a guy to Maxwell if you're going to be a team that runs the ball a lot. But also the defense is the defense at NC State. Like, this is not a joke. This is not a drill. The defense has always been up to par. The only way that this team can reach their accomplishments is if the defense is good, more so than Grayson McCall. I think Grayson McCall can be middling and we get where we need to go more likely than if Grayson McCall is great, but the defense is middling.
A clip that I have saved and I hope to use several times over the course of the season on Twitter is of Kenton saying, NC State doesn't need McCall to be Superman, but what if he is? That's exactly where you start to dream in these types of scenarios, because if Grayson McCall is in the conversation, if he is a finalist for the Maxwell Award, then doing the math backwards, NC State will be in Charlotte for the ACC championship, and they will be in the college football playoff. That level of play will take you there. There is really not a doubt in my mind. Things would have to go catastrophically wrong somewhere else for him to be a Maxwell finalist and us not get to those lengths at the end of the season. But then working it back the other way, we don't need him to be that Superman in order for us to get to Charlotte or get to the CFP. We've said this several different times on here. He just has to make the right play over and over and over. If his completion percentage looks anything like it did during his days at Coastal, he's going to have an outstanding season here at NC State. Hovering right around that 70% completion mark, that's going to do numbers. You got Jordan Waters with you back in the backfield. You got a revamped wide receiving core. That will do incredible numbers this year. But you don't need him to throw for 45 touchdowns in order to get to Charlotte. I think anywhere in the neighborhood of like 30-plus pass touchdowns. The thing about McCall is he can run as well. I fully expect him to use RPO several different times. And I'm going to say, rough estimate, I think he'll run for probably like 6 or 7 rush touchdowns this year. adding all that up, if he's in the neighborhood of like 38 to 40 total touchdowns, you're going to be in the conversation for like 10-2, maybe even 11-1, could even find yourselves at 12-0. So we don't need him to be a Maxwell Award winner. Again, not going to be mad if he is, because that's going to take this program to heights that we've never seen before. But we just need Grayson McCall to be Grayson McCall. We don't need him to be Clark Kent. We just need him to be Grayson McCall, because that alone is good enough.
Perfectly said. Perfectly said.
That'll do it for us here on Tuesday, the first episode on Tuesday, that is. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments down in the comment box. Let us know what you think about Grayson McCall landing on the Maxwell Preseason Award watch list. Can he really do it? Let us know down in the comments. Or if you think that he can't do it, tell us the hurdles that you are worried about coming into the season. Anything else you have on your mind, drop that down in the comment box as well. We'll see you again later on this evening for our second episode of Tuesday. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you then. Go Pack.
Go Pack.